Welcome back to Mic'd Up. We're brought to you by Sterling Automotive. I'm excited to introduce our next guest. He's the man of the day. Go Vols247 reporter, noted Yankees fan, Ben McKee. Ben, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah, appreciate you having me. Hope y'all are doing well.
Before we get into the Tennessee LSU talk, Yankees fan, how upset are you right now that they are not throwing balls in the vicinity of Aaron Judge right now so he can break the record?
It's been pretty annoying because I certainly want to see Judge get to 62, and it was looking like maybe he could get to 65, and
Yeah.
who knows what he could do after that. But I actually somewhat appreciate it because I would rather him sit there and take his pitches and look for his pitch rather than try to chase and get himself out and get himself into a funk going into the postseason. So the baseball fan, the baseball player in me appreciates that he's being patient and taking his walk.
Yes.
But it is annoying. There's no doubt about it. I want to see him swing the bat.
Stick with what got you there. You got bigger fish to fry in the postseason. Stay locked in. I understand that. Let's get to football. Tennessee Volunteers 4 years ago, were not a team that people talked about, right? They're kind of a team that was kind of a laughing stock. They had a bunch of turmoil going on. Josh Heupel comes in, changes the culture, changes the offense. Hendon Hooker's the quarterback, which I don't know why people aren't talking enough about him around the country as being a Heisman contender. I think he's starting to get that. What have you seen that Josh Heupel has brought into Tennessee over these last 2 or 3 years to turn it around?
Yeah, I think the big thing, and it's the cliche that all coaches like to use, it's that he's changed the culture. The culture was just such a mess after Jeremy Pruitt left, and along with Jeremy Pruitt leaving, a lot of players transferred out, and they weren't scrubs that were transferring out. They were really good football players. Henry To'oTo'o starting middle linebacker for Alabama.
Yeah.
Keith Lawrence is starting in the secondary at Oklahoma, and I know Oklahoma's defense isn't all that great, but Tennessee would love to have him in their secondary right now. Wanye Morris is starting offensive tackle at Oklahoma as well. Eric Gray starting running back at Oklahoma. So there's a lot of players that transferred out, and it was just a disaster inside the locker room. And Josh Heupel and his coaching staff have been able to come in and preach that we're about our business, but we're going to have fun in the process. And these players have really taken to that message and really enjoyed that. So he certainly changed the culture, which has been the most important thing to get him to this point, just 16, 17 games into his tenure. This was a team last offseason that people predicted to win 3-4 football games. And not only did they win 6 and go to a bowl game, they almost won an 8. By almost beating Purdue in the Music City Bowl. And then this year, obviously 4-0 going into October. And it's set up for quite the October with LSU this weekend. Bama comes to town next weekend, and then Kentucky at the end of the month. And I don't think that it'll actually happen, but theoretically, if things go Tennessee's way this month, I mean, they're going to be playing to make it into the college football playoff and get to Atlanta. So the culture is the number one thing. And then the development has been through the roof, the player development. Just looking at the difference in Hendon Hooker from when he got to Tennessee to where he is now, the receivers, the offensive linemen. The secondary is an issue. I'm sure you all are well aware, just kind of scouting Tennessee. But aside from the secondary, what Rodney Garner, the D-line coach, has been able to do with his defensive linemen has been incredible as well. So I'd say the culture and the player development is why he's been able to have more success faster than people anticipated.
Well, I don't know if you've been paying attention, but we haven't thrown for very many yards last game, so I think that's going to be which one's going to break first, I think. But, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that definitely noticeable, but you can tell that the talent is they're bought in. It's what it feels like. Jay, you had a question?
Yeah, Ben, I mean, Mikey spoke about him. You spoke about him. You heard a little buzz about him before the season if you actually paid attention to it. Can you talk a little bit about the rise of Hendon Hooker and how he is where he is and the outlook on, I guess, him in those parts of the world and how things look over there for him?
Yeah, right now Tennessee fans love him, and you're right. He has not been talked about enough. My personal opinion is that he hasn't been talked about enough because he's not a sexy prospect like a Will Levis. He doesn't have the incredible arm strength, or he's not running around like Kyler Murray. He's just really efficient. That is, and to me, that is sexy. When you have 42 touchdowns or 47 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, that's sexy to me. I don't know about y'all, but that's what I want my quarterback to the level I want my quarterback playing at through a year and a half. And that's why he's gotten to where he is now. He hasn't necessarily shown just otherworldly arm strength or been the fastest guy on the football field. He does those things. It's just that he's made great decision after great decision after great decision. And it's hard to lose football games when you don't turn the football over. And he's been able to master that. But also now you're starting to see kind of the athlete that he really is. Last week against Florida, or 2 weeks ago against Florida, he had some pretty incredible runs where Florida had him locked up in the backfield, and he was able to break a tackle or two and scramble down the field for 40 yards. So it's not just a game manager. I know that's a cliche that fans like to use when a quarterback doesn't have a unreal trait to their name, but he manages the game really well, and he flashes athleticism quite often. And then also I think the leadership aspect as well. His teammates absolutely adore him and would follow him into the abyss, and he has a very quiet confidence. He's not a rah-rah guy, but he goes about his business very quietly, definitely a lead by example type of leader. And when something needs to be said, he'll step up and say it, and his players, or his teammates, I should say, really respond to that. But that's been the biggest difference, just taking care of the football. Not that he didn't do it before, but he's really found a nice balance of being aggressive and taking shots down the field, but also being careful and taking care of the football. So that's been the biggest thing. And then as he's gotten comfortable in this up-tempo offense, he's been able to branch out a little more and make some spectacular plays.
Yeah, I mean, every time I've watched him play, right, I look at him like, damn, this guy is athletic. He can move. He can get out of the pocket. He doesn't. He'd rather throw the football than run the football, right? Like that is one. That's a good thing to have as a quarterback. And two, not having the turnovers and not forcing balls on the run is another thing that you don't normally see with a guy who kind of does that, right? Usually when a guy runs around, uses athleticism, he just kind of slings it up, a la Johnny Manziel. Not everybody's as lucky as Johnny Manziel and getting tipped balls for touchdowns, but that's normally what you see when you get out of the pocket. You don't really see that with him, right? He's been there for a couple of years. He understands the offense. I know you're a Tennessee guy. I know we're LSU guys over here. From watching the game from your point of view, right? Now you've watched a lot closer than we have. What is the key to stopping or slowing down Hendon Hooker coming into the weekend?
Yeah, to me, it's affecting those around him. LSU, to me, their defensive front is going to have to win its matchup with Tennessee's offensive line. And Tennessee's offensive line, I would say that they're good. They're not going to maul you. They're just really consistent, solid SEC football players. And I know LSU on that side of the ball has quite a bit of talent. I would say LSU's front seven has more talent than maybe Tennessee's offensive front does. But they play really cohesive, and they played a lot of football together. And again, they're just really solid football players. But if you're able to penetrate on the interior of that line, or obviously win on the edge with Ojulari or all the other freaks that LSU has on defense, then that's when Hooker and the offense as a whole gets out of rhythm. And Cedric Tillman, we'll see if he's able to go this weekend. I think there's certainly a chance, but we'll see how he's feeling as the week progresses. But even if he can't play, they still have other guys that can make plays and help Tennessee win this football game. When you look at Jalen Hyatt and Brew McCoy, Ramel Keaton, the guy who came in as a 4-star a couple years ago and was kind of forgotten about, to be honest with you. He stepped up these last couple of games as a senior and has started to make some plays and really filled in well for Cedric against Florida. So he has playmakers. They used to tight ends a good bit as well. But it's when and this is any football game, right? When you win in the line of scrimmage, win in the trenches, it disrupts everything else. So, and I would also say everybody looks at this offense and thinks it's an air raid, kind of like Mike Leach, and it's all about passing. But Josh Heupel has been adamant since the day he took this job that it's all about running the football first. They want to establish the run. That way the opposing defense commits more guys into the box, and then you have less guys out on the perimeter because their splits are so wide. Then you can get it out to Cedric Tillman or Jalen Hyatt and the playmakers, and there's just simple math. There's not enough guys out there to stop it or slow it down. So you got to stop the run and win in the trenches to slow down this offense. You
talked about the secondary being the weak link in the defensive side of the ball for the Vols. Cornerback Warren Burrell is out for the year. You already talked about them being weakness. How big of a blow is that to the defense? And, how do you think that they adjust to that?
Yeah, it is. It's a cluster right now, I would say. It is by far the weakness on this football team. And Warren Burrell, he's been a very inconsistent player. He certainly wasn't going to be an all-SEC player at the end of the year, but he was one of Tennessee's best options. And he was a veteran, a senior, somebody that the coaches – he may not make the play physically, but he wasn't going to bust and have a coverage bust mentally. If he's struggling, it's going to be physically more so than mentally. And veteran coaches, they love that. Especially when you don't really have any other options. That's Tennessee's biggest problem. When you look at Tennessee's secondary, this is when you remember that Josh Heupel is just in his second year and at the beginning of his second year, and just how much of a hit firing Jeremy Pruitt was because of how big of a disaster it was. And it's really the only thing that's going to fix the secondary, in my opinion, is just by recruiting. And they currently have 6 defensive backs committed, 3 corners, 3 safeties. I'm sure they'll hit the portal hard. So that tells you all you need to know about what the coaching staff thinks about the secondary. So Warren Burrell, maybe not the best player on the planet, but he was really one of the few options that Tennessee had. So it hurts from a depth standpoint. Yeah. Now, it will be interesting to see. This week they signed a JUCO corner, D. Williams, but he has not been able to play because he's been banged up. So Josh Heupel said today that he thinks that he'll be available. So we'll see if that can be kind of a trade deadline acquisition of sorts. He's going to get thrown into the fire, and he'll either sink or he'll swim. Yeah. So that's kind of a big question mark. But man, it would be a big help if he can have an impact. The safeties struggle a good bit. I like Kamal Haddon, the other corner, number 5, Tamarion McDonald, number 12 in the slot, the star. I like those 2 DBs, but the rest of the secondary is really shaky right now, and I don't know that there's an in-season fix unless D. Williams, coming off of injury, just plays spectacular football, which is unexpected at this point.
What are the expectations around Knoxville right now? It seems like Tennessee fans are. I don't want to say it feels like you're back, because it's been a minute, but it feels like there's a good bit of optimism around the program, and going into an LSU game where normally it would be the shoe is on the other foot, but it feels like y'all are the ones that have a little bit more momentum than LSU does. Is that the feeling around Knoxville?
Yes, I think that's fair. And nobody's really saying that Tennessee is back, because Tennessee fans know that Tennessee's not back until they're in Atlanta and truly competing for SEC championships, which technically they are. Winning this game would go a long ways to potentially getting to Atlanta. I said earlier, I don't expect Tennessee to end up in the SEC championship game, but winning games like this on Saturday certainly puts you in a position to be playing games in November, to where if the ball goes your way, then you will be playing in Atlanta. And that's when people will be saying legitimately that Tennessee is back. There isn't any Texas is back type of stuff going on over
I mean, Texas never back.
Correct. Right. You don't win a week 2 game and then all of a sudden you're back. And beating Florida was huge, just because Florida has had Tennessee's number. Yeah. But I do think the smart Tennessee football fan, they also recognize that Florida isn't Florida at its best, but still a huge win for the program. And I think there's a little bit of that same feeling with LSU. There's a reason Brian Kelly is in his first year. Yep. Tennessee looks to be maybe a little bit better on paper, which is how a lot of Tennessee fans felt going into the Florida game. And they feel like this is a game that Tennessee should win. So the expectation isn't necessarily to go beat Alabama or go beat Georgia this year, just given what Josh Heupel had to take over 16, 17 months ago. But there is a sense of real confidence, and I would say it's fair to expect Tennessee to win this game because on paper Tennessee does appear to be the better football team.
Yeah, that was my next question. I'm glad you segued me. I appreciate that. What is the message? I know it's only Monday. I know the game's at 11 o'clock on Saturday. So if you're going, I hope you have some mimosas and Bloody Marys on deck because it's going to be an early one. But what is the message that Josh Heupel's given to his team coming into a situation like Saturday? They come to Tiger Stadium, which is notoriously a place that is hard to play. Even 11 a.m. game, and LSU just got put back in the top 25. They came off a win on the road. Wasn't pretty, but they won it. Tennessee's in a position ranked nationally, starting to get some hype nationally. They haven't been in a long time. What is the message that Josh Heupel is giving his guys? Like I said, I know it's early in the week. What have you heard, and what's the vibe around the locker room?
Yeah, a confidence. I mean, you two are former high-profile athletes and understand that you never go into a game thinking that you're going to lose. You always expect to win every game. So there's quite a bit of confidence in the locker room, and it's been the same message. Josh Heupel is really consistent. He's not Mike Leach or Jimbo and Shane Beamer, where on some weeks there's more highlights from the press conference than there are the football games.
Right.
Josh Heupel is very vanilla and doesn't really give the media a whole lot. And his message is the same as it was Florida week. You have a big opportunity on Saturday. Let's prepare like it all week and try and go take advantage of it by putting our best foot forward and playing our best football. So if Tennessee loses on Saturday, it'll be because they didn't execute. They didn't make plays. The secondary had another rough day. Hendon Hooker and the offense wasn't able to get going. That'll be why Tennessee loses. I would be very surprised if Tennessee lost because of Death Valley and the environment and so on and so forth. And that's not LSU and Death Valley not being intimidating. I completely agree with what you said. Even an 11 a.m. game in Baton Rouge is a significant atmosphere. My point in saying that is I just watched this same team Florida week deal with College game day being in town. They checkered Neyland, a huge sellout. The fans are telling you that even though that there's this long history of Florida beating you, you should still beat them this year because you're the better team on paper. And they handled it flawlessly. Yeah, absolutely flawlessly. They weren't distracted or anything like that. And it stems from the leadership of the coaching staff and Hendon Hooker. So I would be very surprised if the peripheral stuff interfered with Tennessee on Saturday. If they lose, it's going to be because they play poor football, and exactly that.
And that's what you kind of mentioned some of the reasons of why they would lose. What does LSU? What's the biggest problem LSU is going to pose for Tennessee this weekend? Right, like what's something that like, oh man, this is the one thing. Like if LSU does this, I'm really worried that it's going to make the game a little different than we expect.
Yeah, I would say Jaden Daniels and his legs. I would say that would be. If I'm Tim Banks, Tennessee's defensive coordinator, that's what's keeping me up at night. Anthony Richardson didn't run around as much as I thought he would. But again, I know you all made the comment earlier, and I'm sure you all have been talking about it plenty. 85 passing yards against an average Auburn team at best isn't necessarily something you want to brag about. But Anthony Richardson looked awful the previous 2 weeks before playing Tennessee as a passer, and he comes in and throws for nearly 500 yards. And all three of us could make the passes that were wide open for him. There's going to be opportunities for plays to be made through the passing game. LSU still has a ton of talent at receiver, and I know they have some talented tight ends as well. So Jaden Daniels, I think if Tennessee can slow down Jaden Daniels, both his legs and his arm, even if it wasn't a super impressive performance against Auburn, that's what will keep Tennessee fans up at night, just because the second and third level of the Tennessee defense just isn't that great, and it gets worse as you go through the defense. The front seven has played pretty good, and the linebackers in coverage are very concerning, but they're pretty good against the run, so that's why I mixed the second level in there with the third level. But Daniel's ability to get out and run around, we saw Matt Corral just absolutely carve up Tennessee last year. and really any dual threat quarterback the last couple of years has really carved up Tennessee because they don't have the guys or the talent to slow them down. So the defensive front for Tennessee is going to have to win against LSU's offensive line. And if they allow Jane Daniels to get out and run around, and if receivers are running as open as Florida's were, then it's going to be an absolute shootout on Saturday.
Being that,
I was like, okay.
So, being that, I mean, you could damn near say this for every week of the season that, when the week is approaching, but being that this is probably their biggest game of the season to date, being that humans, especially athletes, are creatures of habit, how worried do you think the coaching staff is about this being a road game, time change, 11 a.m. game? That the guys will be up to doing what they're supposed to be doing?
I don't think that they're worried about it at all, to be honest with you. And again, like I said a moment ago, that has nothing to do with LSU. It's that I asked Josh Heupel today in his press conference if he liked the 11 a.m. kick, aside from it being 11 a.m. in Baton Rouge. I know LSU fans are not too happy about that,
No.
but he said that if you ask college football coaches all across the country, they want to play at 11 or 12 as soon as you can, just to go ahead and get to work. And even Jerome Carvin, one of Tennessee's offensive linemen, he said the same thing. He said as soon as he wakes up, he wants to go play football on game day. He doesn't like sitting around and waiting all day in the hotel. So I think the players enjoy it being early on the road because you don't want to sit in the hotel all day, and the coaches do as well. But also, I think the fact that Tennessee practices early in the morning, I think that's going to help them in terms of adjusting to the 11 a.m. start. They're not practicing at 6 a.m., but 8 a.m., 9 a.m., they're on the practice field every day. So they're used to getting to work in the morning. So I'd be surprised if that ends up being a factor.
Let's not sleep on if you win the game, you get to get home earlier and you get to celebrate a little bit.
That they will do.
Yeah, that's hopefully it's the other way. Hopefully it's it's a tough plane ride. Ben, I appreciate you coming on, man. Do you any of the boys have any other questions? Lloyd, we're good. Are you coming in for the weekend? You coming for the game?
I am not. I'm sitting this one out. So
all right.
I
see where your confidence level lies.
Yeah. That's one way to look at it. But I'll be honest, I didn't want to sit 18 hours in a car, and plane tickets are through the roof. And
Yeah.
I also cover Tennessee baseball, and they have a scrimmage at 1:00 against Wake Forest on Sunday. So I didn't want to have to complete. That wasn't the deciding factor, but I didn't want to have to rush 9 hours, 10 hours back. To get
you're
there.
saying y'all are just saying you're a baseball school.
Big April series this spring.
I'll be there.
I'll be there too. I'll be there too.
I'm not missing that one. So I am bummed out that I'm missing the trip to LSU. But I've been traveling a ton here late. Went up to Pittsburgh a couple weeks ago when Tennessee played Pitt, and baseball.
Yeah.
The baseball team wore me out back in the spring. So I'm bummed out, but we've got 4 other guys, and they've got it covered at Go Vols247. So I'll be watching this one from the television.
Well, man, I appreciate you coming on the show. We'll have you back on in April next year whenever you're coming in town for the baseball
we'll have
game.
one for baseball, absolutely.
Yeah, no doubt. We'll talk shop
Maybe
for sure.
Maybe a little bet on the line.
Yeah. Oh, actually, that's my next question. So Tennessee opened as a 4-point favorite.
4 point, I think, yeah.
4-point favorite. Now I thought maybe it was going to be more than that. I'm not saying you're a better. We are a betting show, hence the Caesar Sportsbook above us. Do you like that number? You think that's a little low? You think that's a little high? You think that's just right? What do you think?
I think it's just right.
Okay.
I think it's just right. I don't know if I would take the points or not. I have a quirky way of thinking.
Oh, so
about
you are better.
2 points,
okay.
3 points.
Okay, so you are better.
Yes.
So you are snitching on yourself. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
I am.
All right. I didn't want to.
Yes,
I didn't want to throw you out there.
I am
I
snitching
didn't know.
No, you're good. No, I get in on the fun as
right.
well. But my thinking is like, what's the point of being my thinking is like if Tennessee were 2-point favorites, what's the likelihood of them winning by 8 points? So to me, it's almost like a pick'em of sorts.
Right.
And I think to put it in percentages, I would lean like Tennessee 55% to 45% in terms of Tennessee winning. So I think it'll be a close game that comes down to the wire. And I think Hendon Hooker will be the difference on the road. So I think Vols win close, real close because of him. So I think the point spread was just right, and it's come down to 3. So 2, 3, 4 point win, I think is where it'll be.
Yeah, I respect your opinion. I respectfully think it's going to go the other way, obviously.
LSU money on.
But we'll talk. Yeah, we'll talk again
Show us
soon,
your
man.
bets, Slim.
I appreciate you coming on. I'm not going to take too much of your time, dude. And you're great. So I'll see you in the spring.
Yeah, I appreciate y'all having me on, and hope y'all enjoy the game on
All
Saturday.
right, man. Appreciate you
Appreciate
too.